Welcome back to the WSU Democrats Podcast. My name is Ethan Bishop. I'm the president of the organization.
I'm Vaughn. I'm the vice president.
And today we have a very special episode for the start of the semester. We're going to be talking about Trump's war on Venezuela. We're going to talk about the whole daycare fraud scandal and that kind of thing. We're going to talk about Utah trying to pack the courts to make sure that they get the rulings they want. We're going to go into lots of things, so make sure to stay tuned. Vaughn has helped us out with the script today, so I'll pass it off to him.
Yeah, so I hope everyone had a good break. We're going to be, just a reminder, we're going to be tabling, try and do it once a week, yeah. So you'll see us out there more, and if anyone wants to participate, just let us know. We're always looking for more people. So I'll start with Venezuela. There's a lot to cover. There's a lot that goes into it, but I'll just go over some of the facts and the dates and everything. So back in September, the U.S. struck drug boats leaving the country, said, they're narcotics and stuff, killed over 100 people by the end of it. In December, we imposed oil sanctions and put an embargo on Venezuelan oil tankers to really put pressure on Maduro because oil is over 90% of the country's income. And as of January 3rd, we flew in and struck Caracas and abducted Maduro and his wife and took them to the U.S. in New York, and they are being indicted for narco-terrorism charges. So I just want to cover, I feel like this is pretty obvious. The Trump administration says that this is about drugs, it's about fentanyl and cocaine, and he's being obviously indicted on narco-terrorism charges, but that is just completely false. It's just a cover-up. This whole thing is really just about oil and control and regime change. So basically, with the two parties here in the U.S., we are divided on so many things, and I feel like this is one that I'm really seeing just you're either on the very right or the very left on this issue. Not everyone, but that's what I'm kind of seeing online. So the right is saying that the raid was perfectly executed, that Maduro deserves justice, and the citizens of Venezuela are celebrating, and they're thanking Trump for getting this terrible dictator out of power. And on the other hand, the left is saying that this whole operation was unconstitutional. It's illegal both on U.S. law and international law. It could pull us into unwanted conflict, and Trump should not focus money and resources on a foreign country and focusing on regime change for them and, trying to help them out when he ran on addressing domestic issues that we have not seen him do. He hasn't resolved anything that he's talked about helping actual U.S. citizens. So just to cover the legality of it, it's kind of in a gray area, but not really. It's pretty much illegal what he did, taking Maduro. It's illegal under U.S. law because Congress did not authorize it. It was not defensive, right? Venezuela, Maduro did not pose any threat to the U.S. And it targeted a foreign head of state. And then it's illegal under international law because it's a violation of state sovereignty. There was no UN Security Council authorization. And again, no valid self-defense claim. So by the end of it, just to go over, Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world, and there will always be big countries gunning for control of the country and the reserves and everything. So China, Russia, and Iran are our three main competitors that are also wanting control of Venezuela. So the way that I see it is, if you had to choose between one of these four countries, the fourth being us, running Venezuela, what would be the best option? Because realistically, it kind of has to be one of them. You have Maduro, being a terrible dictator and serving interests of one of the 4 countries, and I feel like the U.S. could possibly be the best option. But if you look at our history of getting ourselves involved with countries like this, it hasn't worked well. With Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya, you could say for all of those that they weren't in a good place before we intervened, but they would have been better off if we didn't get involved. So that, we're talking about deaths increasing massively, the state capacity declining, foreign influence increased, and violence is normalized. You have these super violent, regimes taking control. So bottom line, last thing I want to say is the operation was illegal, and despite the people of Venezuela celebrating that Maduro is gone, because, it is a fact he was a terrible person and, shouldn't be running the country. With us involved, it could be worse in the coming years than before we got involved.
Yeah. And I just kind of wanted to say, I agree, and 2 things can be true at the same time, that Maduro was a violent, oppressive dictator that should have been deposed in some way. Now, whether that should have been through the U.S. military, at this particular moment, I say that that's a different story. For example, like you said, Trump ran on lowering gas prices. Well, I guess he could be trying to do that with this here, but I think that just goes to show how our reliance on fossil fuels is a national security risk, where you're literally going into other countries, kidnapping their head of state, and then, literally not even trying to hide that it's for oil. With the war in Iraq, there was a gaffe that one of the officials had made famously talking about, Iraq's oil reserves and all that. And that was universally looked at like, oh, yikes, they admitted that was the motive. Trump just comes out himself as the president of the United States and says, yeah, we're going to be selling their oil. They have a lot of oil. This is going to be very beneficial to American consumers. Grocery prices, all these other things he vowed to bring down, no pointless or forever wars. I wouldn't say that this is a pointless war, but it could turn into a forever war.
Yeah.
And also, even if it's not a pointless war, it's a war that probably shouldn't have happened right now. It seems like, if anything, this is just to distract from the Epstein files. And like I said, it's for oil. And it's not actually about making Venezuela better. It's about having them bend to their will. Mm-hmm. And if you thought that Trump was doing everything right here, why didn't he? He's already violating international law and U.S. law by going to war without authorization from Congress. Why didn't he put the opposition leader who just won the Nobel Peace Prize as the president of the country of Venezuela? I mean, her stand-in candidate in the last election won like 2/3 of the vote. And so why didn't they put her as the president? And why did they have Maduro's own vice president be the president now? It's like, if he actually cared, and then I think he said something like, oh, if she defies us, she's going to get a fate worse than Maduro. It's like they're aligned with him. If you're going to do something like that, you need to clean house. You need to get all of them out of there. So let's say we had a good president. What would a good president do? A good president would actually try to alleviate the suffering of the Americans at home first. Yeah. And then they would start thinking, what are some other, places around the world? How could America? Because I actually believe, to an extent, that because America has the strongest military in the world, we actually do have some sort of obligation to be the world's policeman in a way, because we have the resources and the means to do it, and doing that makes us safer. Because if we're having terrorist attacks or an authoritarian government, that causes instability, and that can cause, like in Venezuela, for example, that can cause a lot of migration upwards into the U.S., which the conservatives are always complaining about. So if we fix these problems, you wouldn't have things like that going on. I think that it really did seem like, I got to give credit where credit is due, because it did seem like a pretty clean operation as far as they got in there. They didn't kill a ton of civilians. I believe there were civilians that got killed. But it wasn't like this disastrous spectacle that you could look at, kind of like Biden's withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021, which marked the end of his presidency after that point, not just because of that, but that's what started it. So at least there's that. I mean, I wouldn't give that credit to Trump, though, because I think the president of the United States is they're less involved in the minutia of how we're going to carry out an attack. That's like what the generals and all the other military officials do. But yeah, that's what I think about it. It's just it would be right under the right circumstances, but
Yeah.
this is not it, and he did not do what he should have done.
Yeah, I mean, you're seeing, like I said, citizens in our country more divided, more violent than arguably ever before. I think it's like 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. You're about to see health premiums more than double for millions of people once Obamacare gets out of here. And then just to further explain why this isn't about drugs, is because the president of Honduras was convicted of trafficking millions of drugs into the U.S., and Trump pardoned him for a reason we don't know. So it's clearly not about drugs. It's all about, oil and these other things. And, like you said, Maduro's VP is currently in charge. She was chosen by him, and that's not a good sign. A big reason why a lot of our past foreign affairs, like I said, Libya, Afghanistan, Iraq, a lot of the reason why they went so terribly is because when we got rid of their leader, we didn't set up a proper system for them to adopt democratic processes and leave them in good hands. We just kind of got out of there, and then you have these super violent militias that just run the country. So if we're going to get Maduro out of there, we should definitely, take further steps. It was a very clean and quick operation. It was under like 2 hours, 3 hours that they were in and out of there. But it's not just a in and out of their situation. It could pull us into further conflict. You have China and Russia saying, return Maduro immediately. And, I don't think they're going to take that lightly. I think I read somewhere that China got 1 million barrels a day from Venezuela that they're no longer getting. So these have very big consequences, and hopefully we don't, none of these countries take retaliatory measures back at us.
Yeah, and I think that another thing, because a lot of people will look at the capture of Maduro and all that, and the Venezuelans celebrating, and they're like, oh, yay. And then they might see that Trump says they're going to be occupying Venezuela at the moment. And it's like, yeah, that turns it into something else. Like, we didn't sign up for that.
Yeah.
Even if we signed up for you taking out this murderous dictator, we did not sign up for you trying to govern another country, acting like it's part of the United States or something. Like, as if that should be what occupies your focus right now. If that's what we want to be paying money to facilitate that. That's why I think, honestly, you could, it was a clean operation, but I think it's pretty clear from Trump just saying, oh, we're going to run things in the country. We're going to leave Maduro's vice president in charge, and act as if that's going to change anything besides maybe her kowtowing to Trump because she's afraid. It literally just doesn't make any sense. Yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, I also want to say that, oh, no, I forgot.
We're both losing it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I was going to say that by violating U.S. law and especially international law, it just kind of opens the doors for, what other countries are allowed to do without consequences, because it did just happen, and we'll see if the U.S. actually takes consequences for this. I don't think we will, but that tells China that, what if they want to just go into Taiwan and take control, and if Putin wants to go into Ukraine and just abduct, Zelensky, then that's just going to be okay. So it's not good for, other situations, other wars as well.
Yeah, I agree. And it was kind of funny when Zelensky reacted to what happened in Venezuela. He was like, yo, he's like, if that's the way you deal with dictators, then I know what the U.S. should do next, like with Russia and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Which is funny because honestly, if they were denuclearized, I'd say, like, honestly, I would not be mad if Trump did that. Just because,
Russia?
yeah.
Yeah.
Because Russia is just terrible. What they've done to Ukraine,
Yeah.
literally bombing children's and maternities hospitals, trying to literally, I don't know if this is a word, but deculturize the Ukrainians to be more like Russians.
Mm-hmm.
Sexual violence has been engaged in by Russian soldiers. Just trying to dehumanize the Ukrainians and all that. So, like, I would love for that to happen. It sucks that Russia has the nukes and that kind of thing. I kind of wish Superman was real so he could just go destroy all the nukes and then just fuck it. They could just invade.
But yeah, I mean, we need to get out of these foreign conflicts and stop creating new ones for us and just focus our resources back home, because obviously we have so many issues right here and on U.S. soil, and everything costs money, sending billions to Israel, and anything we do with Venezuela, everything costs money, and that money could be, directed towards our own issues that affect us as citizens.
I agree, yeah.
So we'll move on to daycare fraud in Minnesota. So Nick Shirley, if you haven't heard of him, he's a right-wing journalist. He has spiked national interest by covering alleged Somalian-run daycare fraud in Minnesota, prompting both state and federal investigations. He's posted multiple videos across different social media platforms approaching and questioning these daycare centers, claiming that they receive millions in state funding despite not delivering any care. So here are the facts. There's a lot of misinformation out there. It's also, again, very new, so we don't know everything that's true. But the facts are investigators found that some daycare centers, not all of them, some have claimed reimbursements for services that they did not provide. Total amounts are in the hundreds of millions of dollars. The federal government has paused billions in funding for these daycares for Minnesota and a few other states. And then because of all this, Governor Tim Walz has announced that he will not seek re-election to focus on resolving this fraud scandal. And Nick Shirley has boasted that he has ended Tim Walz's career. And then certain communities have been disproportionately investigated because Nick Shirley, is doing with Somalian-run daycare centers. There's a lot of Somali Americans in Minnesota. They have the largest Somali American population in the U.S. And part of that is because during the 1990s civil war in Somalia, Minnesota specifically had a lot of good refugee support programs to take these people in. And then they initially settled there, and then all the future immigrants want to move with their friends and family. So that's why they have the largest population there. And so we'll see how it pans out. But Tim Walz is not running again, and there is fraud for sure, but not as much as people like Nick Shirley say that there is.
That's funny that he's bragging about Tim Walz. He ended Tim Walz's re-election bid. You do realize that he was not even the strongest candidate that could become, and I don't think she's announced yet, but Amy Klobuchar, the senator from Minnesota, you really want to face her. It's like, y'all are going to lose regardless. Minnesota is the only state where Ronald Reagan didn't carry it in 1984, and it's gone blue ever since. And there's absolutely no chance that the Republicans, just from this one scandal, are going to be able to make up ground in a blue state, especially in what's going to be a blue wave year, because Donald Trump is going to be in office. Last time that happened in 2018, the Republicans lost the congressional popular vote by the largest margin in American history. So if they think that this one scandal is going to change something to where they can actually win the governorship, and especially in fucking Minnesota, it's Mike Lindell is running as the Republican there, the My Pillow guy, the dude who's
really?
all in that. Yeah. He's all in the conspiracy theories. He's one of the lead election deniers after 2020, which has proven to be poisonous towards Republicans. That's why we saw so many lose in 2022, is because they were all aligned with Trump saying the election was rigged and all that. And so Mike Lindell, he's just a huge extremist, and he's probably going to win that nomination. I don't know, unless Trump supports someone else, which he might, because he might be smart enough to know Mike Lindell's just going to lose. But I think any Republican, honestly, especially against Klobuchar, elected statewide several times. So it's like, that's so dumb he's bragging about it. I don't know. I think that, and plus, wasn't the investigation into the daycare center started by President Biden? I haven't actually verified that yet, but that's something else that I've seen to where it wasn't like, it's not something that's just been hidden, and it's definitely not some kind of Democratic scandal. I think if it's pretty clear if the daycares were taking money and they weren't actually providing services, yes, the buck stops at the government officials and those who are approving of all of this money going towards these individuals. But at the same time, there's also plausible deniability, and you have to take into consideration how much they actually knew. Do you think Tim Walz personally knew that these people were doing that?
Yeah, he's not just letting it happen.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
Like, this is probably the first, or that he's heard about it too. Yeah. So, and that's why he's dealing with it now.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like they think about these things and they try to solve them. It's like there's going to be things, just like today, Governor Cox posted that kindergartners through third grade level, about half of them are not reading at their grade level. And he said, oh, okay, we need to do better. Now, if I wanted to be super partisan, I'd be like, fuck you, dude. You're the reason why that happened. Like, the buck stops with you.
Yeah.
But I know it's not that simple, and there's other factors that come into play. So to say something like this should completely derail someone's political career. Does it look bad? Yes. Is it objectively a bad thing? Yes. But I don't think it's something to say, oh, well, this should have put the nail in Tim Walz's coffin. Like, come on now.
Yeah, I mean, don't believe everything you see online, because the bottom line is Nick Shirley has inflated this issue. It's not, he says a lot of numbers, and you really have to look at the data, especially because it's so new and we don't know a lot yet. Just don't believe everything you hear. But, this is also how people like him gain popularity. When this was first happening, I just got a bunch of reels of him going into these daycare centers. So that was pushed out to a lot of people, and, gained a lot of attention. Yeah. So moving on to the Epstein files. There's a lot here. I would like to say that if you are someone or know someone who genuinely believes that Trump is not involved in the Epstein files, you need to wake up. And if you believe the truth and he's in there, you should go out and tell people that that are believing all the stuff that Trump is saying that he's not in there, and educate them, and maybe not even get them to stop supporting Trump, because that's a lot, but just get them to acknowledge the truth that he is deeply involved in sex trafficking with minors. I mean, it's terrible stuff. So with the Epstein Files Release Act that was passed, the DOJ had 30 days to release the Epstein files. They were supposed to release all of them. Obviously, they waited until the last minute to do so because they were blacking out and redacting all of Trump's names. And they by the end of the 30 days, they released a batch of the Epstein files, and they said, here's some of it. We're going to release the rest incrementally because we have to keep redacting names. We can't put them out right now. So only 1%, about 1% of the files have been released. And there's thousands, tens of thousands of documents or pages that have been released. And that's just 1% of all the files, because it is, it's gone on obviously for years and years, and it's big. It's a lot. So much of the files have been redacted, and they were supposed to be redacted to protect victims. And the release of the files was to get the truth to the American people and to hold people accountable who have committed, some terrible acts. And we are seeing that these redactions are protecting these criminals, and they're redacting names of the sex traffickers themselves and the rapists themselves. They're redacting their own names. And if you go into some of the documents, there are about 550 plus pages right now. There's going to be more that are completely blacked out. I mean, you can go on the website and you open the PDF and you scroll. Every page is completely blacked out. There's not a single word that you can read on there. And it's just like a slap in the face, like that they're able to do this. They said, we're going to release them, and then they black out everything and release them. Like that shouldn't be allowed. But that's what we're looking at. And then I watched a video on this new batch of files that was released. So there's 10 co-conspirators that have been named in the files, and these co-conspirators are, the elites with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell that were just at the very top that were running this thing. So there's 10 of them that were named in the files. We know 3 of them. One is Ghislaine Maxwell, who is facing she's in a nice little hotel of a prison. One is Jean-Luc Brunel, who was a French modeling agent accused of supplying minors to Epstein, or I shouldn't say accused, he was convicted, and he died in prison in 2022. And then Leslie Wexner is a billionaire founder of Victoria's Secret. It did not say that he was directly involved, just that the DOJ tried to contact him, and then nothing after that. So he's a suspect, I guess you could say. And then the other 7 have been redacted, and you can see in these files, they talk about the co-conspirators and they talk about Ghislaine Maxwell and the rest, and they redact the names of the other sex traffickers. They say there's 1 in Boston, 1 in Connecticut, 3 in Florida, and then you can see that they redact those exact names. So the DOJ is protecting these pedophiles and rapists, and it is absolutely unacceptable. They're just getting away with it. And it's just plain to see. Anyone can go and open the files and see that all of this is true. So they're protecting these criminals. And then the DOJ came out and said, when they released the batch of the files, and they said, oh, just so you know, some of the information regarding Trump, it's false and misleading. So they redacted as much as they could, and then they knew that because he's so involved, they can't redact everything. So they say, okay, well, Trump's in here, but just so you know, it's, fake news or whatever they want to call it. So it's really, really bad for him. They can't cover it all up. And then I just want to say one more incident that was brought up in the files is that there was a tip given to the FBI in, I want to say 2020, and this was a tip from a victim who was sex trafficked by Jeffrey Epstein and her uncle, and she said in the tip that on Lake Michigan, Trump paid to have sex with her multiple times when she was 13 years old and pregnant, and her newborn baby, her infant child that she gave birth to, was thrown overboard in Lake Michigan and killed by, I don't know if it was by her uncle, but it was with her uncle, and she said that Trump was there during that incident. So this is not confirmed to be 100% true. It was just a tip. But we do know that the victim put this out there. The FBI assigned it a case number, but they never looked into it past then. And the DOJ is coming out and saying that this is false, this never happened. Well, how do you know that? They never looked into it. So this is just like unspeakable evil in the Epstein files and with Trump involved, and they're just continuing to cover the whole thing up. I really hope people wake up and see, how bad it really is.
I'm glad you brought up that last part because I was waiting for you to say something about that because that's what I've been thinking about. What year did you say that tip was given?
I was reading, I think the email said 2020.
Okay. Interesting. Well, if it was assigned a case number and things like that, I would say that lends at least a little bit of credence to it, because if it was just some random person trying to smear Trump, then it would not have ended up there. I'm sure so many people have tried to create allegations against Trump just after the fact. Not to say that he didn't do a bunch of stuff, but yeah, so I think there's probably some kind of truth to it. If it was a victim they would have at least verified that they're a victim if that's what they were portrayed as in the files.
Yeah.
So
and they redacted her name, obviously.
Yeah, so it seems interesting if he actually did that. And then so she was already pregnant and gave birth, and it wasn't Trump's baby, was it?
No, it doesn't say whose baby it was, but that she was 13 years old and pregnant. And I believe while she was pregnant, Trump paid to have sex with her, is what she said. I mean, sex or whatever word it was redacted, but we know what that means. And then, Trump was there at the time that her infant was killed. So if this is true, I mean,
it's like he should be going down for, being an accomplice to murder at that point. If he was there and didn't say anything about it, it's like, bruh.
Yeah.
And they talk about pro-life this, pro-life that, when they're talking about a non-sentient flesh carrot in the womb, which has never, ever had any kind of consciousness. Then you have an actual baby, and they throw them overboard. Like, bruh, I don't mean to laugh about it. It's just so ridiculous and disgusting that I'm just like, bruh. Like, and I'm not saying that this definitely happened, but honestly, with all the other stuff that it seems like Trump has done, that he's admitted to, walking in on beauty pageant contestants at the Miss USA events and that kind of thing. Saying he's going to grab women by their P word and saying that, when you're a star, they let you do it.
Yeah.
And all of his sexual abuse things. I didn't think that actually killing a baby would be part of that. And I'm not surprised if he didn't actually throw the baby off board. But with the type of person he is, kind of like how he's a narcissist, he never seems to have any remorse for anything.
Yeah.
I could totally see that being something that just happened in his life, and he's just like, I don't care.
Or he just stood there and watched, didn't stop it or anything.
Yeah, it seemed like he's just the type of person to not really care and just to be like, okay, that happened. Or like, oh, they got a little bit crazy. It's like, plus, what was the context of throwing the baby overboard? Did she just not want the baby? Was it like a party trick? Like, what kind of context? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I'm curious too, and I'm not sure what the answer is. I would assume that it was, one of the elites that was their baby and they didn't want it or had nothing to do with it. I would assume that that's the case, but I also want to, ask conservatives, because I hear all the time people say, I support Trump as a president, but not as a person. And they acknowledge that he's a terrible person, and they'll say that to you, but they still voted for him, and they still support them. So I want to ask them, where do you draw the line? If Trump went out and murdered someone today, and there was video evidence, and you could see it, would you still support him? Probably not. Okay, well, where do you draw the line? If he's, trying to overthrow, with January 6th, if he's defying the Constitution, if he's a rapist, where do you draw the line at not supporting him anymore? Because as far as I can see, no matter how good of a president he is, which he's not at all, this is someone that, even if they were the perfect president, I could never vote for someone who has done, such, unspeakable things.
Yeah, and I mean that's why, and it's so hypocritical too, because it's just Trump or another Republican, but oftentimes it is just Trump because that's who they gravitate towards, and even other Republicans often go down for less than what Trump has done. But yeah, I'd agree, and the Republican would probably just be like, I still support him just because he's good for the economy, and it just doesn't really matter, and all that stuff isn't really verified, and all that. Even though you have all the allegations, even though you have him admitting that he had peeped on these girls, the Miss USA pageants and all that, you have all of this evidence, and Trump and his supporters and all of them are just like, oh, I don't really care. But if it was Biden or if it was Obama, they would be like, no, that's such a bad thing.
Lock him up, everything.
And they were saying to lock up Hillary Clinton for the email scandal and all that sort of thing. And then they didn't want to do anything about all of the classified documents that Trump stole and brought back to his residence in Mar-a-Lago after he was president. And And then he lied to the National Archives about returning them for over a year, forcing them to raid his own place. And then he whined, bitched, and complained about it. It's like, dude, they get away with so much shit that the Democrats do not get away with. It's crazy. And I don't fully know the answer to that. I don't know how we're going to change America to where we have an even scoreboard where we can all look at something that one national actor does and say, oh, that was bad, and another national actor does the same thing, and we say that was bad as well, equally. It doesn't matter what their party affiliation was. Okay, if it was bad, it's bad, and if it's bad enough to not vote for them, we're not going to hold our noses and vote for them. Now, it's really hard if it was between someone like Biden and Trump. And let's say because there was some project, it was called Project Veritas. They were the ones behind it, where they had basically gotten a notebook from, I think they said it was from Ashley Biden, Joe Biden's daughter. And it was basically notes saying that she used to take showers with Joe Biden. But the person that behind that piece of evidence came out and said it was fabricated after the fact. Really? But let's say it wasn't. Let's say that he actually did do that. If it was that versus Trump, especially when you know Trump is also a sexual abuser. You know? I don't know. She was a minor though. Okay. Yeah. I think probably like teen years, something like that. I don't know for sure though. Yeah. But yeah, so it's like if he did actually do something like that, and it was him versus Trump, and voting third party is probably going to do nothing. We don't have national ranked choice voting. So what do we do in that situation? It's a very hard one, but I would say if you're dealing with two sexual predators and you have to vote for one, I would say, then it really truly does become the better of two evils if you have to elect someone like that. But that's why it's so important to be involved in the primary, because then you can prevent yourself from having to vote for the best of the two evils, which is why I hope, in this podcast we could talk a little bit about that, about what we're looking for in candidates for this next November election and all that kind of thing. That could be interesting. Because you need to vote in the primaries and make sure that your preferred candidate gets in power and wins that nomination, because otherwise you can't complain when the Democrat isn't someone you want, because you didn't fight to get the person you wanted, on the ballot for the general election. So, yeah.
Yeah. And the bias is just so incredibly terrible right now. And I think that to answer your question of how we get to a point where we can condemn criminals across the board, no matter the political party, is by, trying to unify the two parties as much as we can and just get back to somewhere like, quite a few years ago where politics wouldn't divide families and separate friends. And you could look at someone and, as a Democrat, and you look at someone that's a Republican and, still be really good friends with them. And nowadays, someone voted for Trump and it's a whole different story. So trying to fix that is huge. And the bias is just so bad. I mean, you have, I remember I was debating a conservative and said, how can you support someone who is a convicted rapist, has 27 sexual assault allegations, and someone who is certainly involved with Jeffrey Epstein and sex trafficking minors? How could you support someone like that? And he said, well, Biden with kids, he's sniffing the kids. There's those videos where he's sniffing the kids. It's like, how dumb do you have to be? I mean, it just shows the bias plain and simple right there.
And plus, it's like he sniffed a kid's head. Okay, how does that justify what Trump did?
Yeah.
How does that justify voting for Trump? If you're saying that, oh, well, they did the same thing, and it's like, even if I agree to that, that means you can't condemn Trump? Like, even if, because I would condemn Biden for a lot of things. I don't know, maybe his, unconditional support for Israel, I would criticize him for that. I wouldn't be like, oh, well, Trump did it too, so it's okay for Biden to do it. Because that's literally what they're saying.
Yeah.
So you need to condemn all of it, if... And plus, Biden sniffing the heads of kids, that's not even as bad as what Trump is accused of, or what he's admitted to doing.
Not even close.
That's not even worse than what he's admitted to doing.
Yeah.
So it's So it doesn't even make any sense. Plus, so in discussions like that, I could even say, Like, because there are some videos of Biden being where he is looking kind of creepy with the kids and stuff. You could even say, okay, how does that justify what Trump did? We're talking about Trump right now. Biden is not in office. He's never coming back to office. He's probably going to die in a couple of years, to be honest with you. I'm sorry. But it's like he's not this huge, like we talk about it because he's the most recent Democratic president. And honestly, that's not a bad thing because I think in many ways he did do a good job. I think he genuinely tried to govern as a president for all Americans. That's why we saw the bipartisan infrastructure bill. He even got a bipartisan gun safety bill, which no one ever thought was possible in the 2020s. He did all sorts of things, invested into expanding broadband and internet and all of these infrastructural projects in rural communities and places and overwhelmingly red states because he knew that's what needed it most in these rural areas. And then they shit on him and they say that he was such a terrible president when Trump will never be half the president that Joe Biden was, period. Okay? When it compared Biden to Trump, and I'm proud of Joe Biden every single day, and I don't agree with every single thing he did, but I will stand by that, period. So for anyone who says that they're just as bad or the Democrats are just as bad as the Republicans, look, the Democrats have work they need to do too, but that work starts from inside. It doesn't come from people complaining on the outskirts, not even being involved, not even doing anything, just complaining to complain. You need to work on it from the inside to actually fix it. And then the Republican Party, it's the same thing. I think that for them to finally start feeling accountability and to finally start condemning things when they happen fully is they need to defeat MAGA Republicans in these elections. And that might screw us because I've seen polling that shows if it's a moderate Republican or even someone, and this is the scary part, anyone who's even seen as moderate, more moderate than Trump, which could be J.D. Vance, that they are actually in a pretty good position to win the next election versus a Democrat. So it goes to show, like, even if it messes up our own party chances, I think it's so important just because Trump is an existential threat to democracy, because Trump is just a cult of personality where we're just following his whim. We're going into wars, which we honestly shouldn't be doing right now. We're doing all of these things. They need to defeat all of the MAGA Republicans and replace them with moderate Republicans who believe that, raping kids is wrong and that maybe we shouldn't, be shredding the Constitution. He literally said we should terminate the U.S. Constitution to illegally retain power after he lost the 2020 election. So, yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah. You want to transition to Utah?
Yeah.
So Utah's GOP is fighting to keep control of the state. A few recent events have happened that have favored Democrats, and the Utah Republicans are in shambles about these things, and they're realizing that the Democratic Party in Utah is growing, and that scares them. It threatens their control, absolute control over the state. So what they want to do is add 2 more seats to the Utah Senate, which is seen as packing the courts, and they want to repeal Prop 4, which is the whole reason that we were able to stop their gerrymandered redistricting map. They want to repeal that so it goes back to the legislative power, and no one can stop them in the future when they want to do that. So, what do you think? I guess I should say that as of December 2025, Utah is about 50% Republican, 14% Democrat, and 31% unaffiliated. And the like I said, the Democratic percentage is rising. So, like the map that they stopped, the gerrymandered map, and then with the new map that they put up gives us one seat, one Democratic seat out of 4. So it's just about equal representation, and the GOP just sees this as a threat. They want full control of the state.
Yeah, and I think oftentimes they point to that 14% number and they're like, oh, hey, look, Democrats are such a little number. Look at how many of the unaffiliated voters vote Democratic, and also look at the margins. Like in 2024, when Kamala Harris, she nearly got 38% of the vote, round that up 40%. Biden got 38%. So, so we're getting almost 40% of the vote. We deserve at least one fucking district. And So if we're getting almost 40% of the vote, you do not have the mandate you think you have as a Republican, especially when it's risen so quickly. And yeah, this isn't the perfect comparison because Mitt Romney was Mormon, so he had a lot of appeal to Republicans here in 2012, and he just fucking kicked Barack Obama's ass there. Whereas here in 2016, there was a third party candidate named Evan McMullen, won I think it was 30% of the vote. Don't quote me on that. I need to look at that again. And then so there's a bunch of conservatives because he ran as the true conservative, not Trump. He ran that he was more conservative than Trump, and there was a lot of people that voted for him. So that shows with Trump, the support for Republicans has dropped. And then in 2022, in the Senate race against Mike Lee, who literally advised Trump's legal counsel in his impeachment for the January 6th insurrection, Mike Lee literally coached them on how to defend Trump. Evan McMullen ran against him. He made it about democracy, about Mike Lee trying to overturn the 2020 election, about the environment, about having an economy that works for all. He opposed the extreme abortion bans, which were on everyone's mind at the time after the Dobbs decision and all that sort of thing. And he lost by 10 points. Okay, you lose by 10 points in a state where Mitt Romney won 70% of the vote. It's that is insane. That is an insane turnaround in a relatively short amount of time. And then and then before that you got Biden, and then you have Harris winning the same amount when in other states you got drop in Democratic support by 10 points, maybe even more than that in some places. So the Democratic movement is definitely rising, and they're super fucking terrified. And I think also what's in the back of their minds is if the state courts can force them to draw a blue district on the statewide level, what could they do to those legislative districts, which are incredibly fucking gerrymandered? The House districts and the Senate districts, that cements them in not just a majority, in a super majority. That's why they can override the governor's veto, and they have done it before. So I think that's what they're afraid of, because if the court came down, and this was also something I talked about at the time he was the vice chair of the Utah Democratic Party when he came on our podcast, not a little over a year ago and all that, if we get fair maps for our congressional maps, will we get fair maps for our state legislative maps? And he said he didn't know. Apparently it didn't come together because it was just one case at a time. But if we do get fair legislative maps, we could easily at least break the supermajority if we don't get a majority just outright, which I don't think we necessarily would. But that would be insane, especially in the blue wave year of 2026, where we see that, I believe it was someone I can't even remember the state, but we have crazy overperformances, football field number points is what we're seeing, is how much these Democrats are overperforming. So yeah.
Yeah, and I have hope that like you said, J.D. Vance could, maybe take 2028. I have hope that people will come to their senses and the blue wave will just get stronger and stronger. Hopefully we see that as proof in, November of this year, and then continue to see that, because the MAGA base is being dismantled. You have people like Nick Fuentes, who says, he didn't vote for Trump and is constantly bashing Trump for being a terrible president. That's what he says. And you people like him are very important, just because it really disrupts his supporters and is breaking up his base. And he's, has the increasingly, his worst favorability rating. That just gets worse and worse. So hopefully people will, realize who they should really vote for.
Yeah, and with J.D. Vance, I only say that because this one dude who's been in politics for years and years and years, just studying polling and all this kind of shit, he was looking at the poll and analyzing it, which showed that a moderate Democrat, no surprise on paper, that when you ask people, would you rather a moderate Democrat or a progressive Democrat, the majority say moderate. And then when you ask, you want a MAGA Republican or a moderate Republican, they say moderate Republican. the moderate Republican wins against the moderate Democrat in that poll, and more so against the progressive Democrat, and the MAGA Republican does much worse. So, like, there's that, but also there's that factor. But I don't necessarily think I agree with that poll because when you look at Trump's approval rating, that definitely translates just like how Biden's approval rating translated to Kamala Harris, to where even if she didn't have the same approval rating as Biden, dragged her down enough. But I think the real story of that election was the economy, which will still be bad at this point. Unless all the Venezuelan oil, now they're gonna win. But yeah, I mean, if the economy is bad and he's having Trump drag him down, I don't think that he's gonna win. I think against Newsom, I'll still give it to Newsom. I think that he would win that. And it's actually pretty funny how I think Nick Fuentes said this, but also I was watching another video. Another dude who seemed like maybe Nick Fuentes aligned. He was talking to Michael Knowles, and he was like, "Yeah, JD Vance is a fat subhuman. He's like,
I saw that. Yeah,
he's like Gavin Newsom mogs him all day, and all that kind of stuff." And I'm like, I don't really think JD Vance is fat, to be honest. But anyway, I don't know. I think that Gavin Newsom would win. But I was talking to another girl earlier today where she was saying that we're totally off track from the gerrymander. Or did we move on from that?
No, go on.
Okay. Well, she was saying that that Gavin Newsom, she doesn't really like it because she doesn't really like the whole Nancy Pelosi type Democrats, and she kind of feels like he might be in that vein, and she thinks that the homelessness problem in like San Francisco is a big problem and all that sort of thing. Basically what I responded with was, one, like, even if there are issues with homelessness and that, you're going to have those issues in these big cities. Like, even go to Florida and a lot of those places, you're going to see a lot of homelessness there. Really, any major city is going to deal with that, some more than others. But the real reason why I personally think Gavin Newsom would be a strong candidate, I'm not opposed to, like, say, I think Andy Bashir would be a really, really good candidate. In some ways, he might even be better than Gavin Newsom, but that's a debate for another time, is how Gavin Newsom, he debates so well. He has a very strong command of the numbers. He has many progressive victories to tout in California, like them most recently standing up to ICE, trying to make it so they can't wear masks or they'll get huge fines if they try to do that. So actually standing up for what's right. And I think rhetorically, great. I think that his team behind him right now on his social media, they go viral like every few weeks because they just post something that they're like, oh, that was really funny. And it goes along with his agenda. So it's like he has the resources and the backing, and like I said, and I was telling her, the girl I was talking to this, and she thought it was kind of funny. I was like, yeah, and he's handsome, he's tall, he's all this stuff. That will help him win the election, because it's going to be hard to categorize him as like feeble and weak and a liberal sissy and all this kind of shit.
And he's not that old.
Yeah, he's really not. And so he's just, just coming off like tall. He is kind of like a tough guy in a way. Not like someone who would be like acting like he is, but he definitely seems like someone you wouldn't necessarily want to mess with, as far as he probably knows how to get things done, and that's the vibe he gives off, and I think that would be good. But also Andy Bashir would be good as well. I think he would come without the baggage that Gavin Newsom would have, except Andy Bashir, he's to the right of Gavin Newsom on guns, which in some ways you might think I would support, because I am pro Second Amendment, not in the way that I think mentally ill people should be able to go get a gun and go shoot up a school or something. There should be common sense gun regulations. I just don't think that guns should be banned completely. And Andy Bashir would probably moderate on that position, but I just think that Gavin Newsom is a better speaker and better rhetorically, so I think I would love to see him in a debate against JD Vance. I think he would destroy him.
Yeah, I think, like you said, Trump's reputation, kind of sticks to JD Vance, and what we're seeing with the Epstein files, that's going to continue to drag him down and, coincidentally, hurt JD Vance as well. So he is young. He is a really good speaker. But he also, has said some things that are concerning, how he tries to convince people that Charlie Kirk was a good person and, lots of other things. So we'll see if, what JD Vance's favorability rating will be.
One thing I saw at the America Fest that they did with Erica Kirk and all that, and JD Vance was there, was he was like, yeah, we are a Christian nation. I fucking hate when people say that. We are not a Christian nation. We were expressly meant to not be a Christian nation because we were founded out of Christian tyranny. That's what happened. Okay, that's why we founded America, is because the king thought he knew better because he's anointed there. He was anointed there, and he thought that they could take our taxes without representation. They thought that they could increase taxes. They thought that they could, take our guns from us. They thought they could do all sorts of things that started the American Revolution. And during the fact, it's like we did not set up our constitution to be a Christian nation. We did not set up any states to be Christian states. We did not do anything like that because we knew the danger that would cause, which is religious rule that so many people were fleeing from because they were persecuted over in Europe. So they came to America. So it's just so dumb. It's like they want to claim it. And if anything, this might sound like, oh, you're being a liberal sissy. But when you say this is a Christian nation, it almost seems like genocidal because you're saying that, oh, we want only Christians here. This is a nation for Christians. So what does that mean for the Muslims? What does that mean for the Jews? What does that mean for all these other religions? It means that they can basically kick rocks, or in some places, if you want to talk Nick Fuentes and white nationalists and all that stuff, yeah, that means they can get rounded up and deported, if not worse. So this rhetoric is super extreme coming from JD Vance, and saying that the left is more violent than the right, which is not true at all. If you look at the past, 20 years, more than that. If you look at the past year, it gets a little bit more even, but still, that's just a cherry pick of an incredibly divisive president in an incredibly strenuous time. But yeah, I think that, I don't know. I think also, like with JD Vance, I think that his rhetoric, even though he comes off a little bit like, what's it called? Like, he does come off a little bit more moderate, a little bit more polished and that sort of thing. I still think that because he's not Trump, because Trump he has a way of just getting away with anything he says. Yeah. I don't think JD Vance is necessarily the same way. No. Because I think when he says something that could be seen as divisive, especially when he has a spotlight on him, when he's the nominee, that's going to be amplified to a much huger extent than anything Trump said, because also JD Vance doesn't have the track record of making so many bad comments. So JD Vance, it'll seem more like a bigger deal. Like, you could even look at the whole thing with him fucking a couch, like how that was a huge meme for a while, that he fucked a couch. And like, it's like that would not work with Trump. Like, yeah, you had Trump, sucking off Bill Clinton or something. Yeah. But like, even that, I feel like, wasn't even played out enough, like as much as something like that would with JD Vance.
Yeah, and I think with JD Vance, I think if Trump dies in office, because he is very old, and sometimes the cases, they have a bad fall, and everything goes downhill very quickly, which could happen. I would hope that JD Vance becomes more moderate because he's not under Trump's control anymore, because this is someone who called Trump Hitler, and who was very anti-Trump until he was selected to be VP, and then he just totally did a 180. So, that's not what we're seeing right now, is not who JD Vance really is. I think if he was president, if Trump died in office or anything, it wouldn't really be better for the country than Trump, though, because this is someone who excelled up the political ladder extremely fast. He became Senator of Ohio very quickly, and I think he very much serves the interests of the billionaire class above all else, which is also what Trump does, but JD Vance might be even more that way. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with JD Vance, I mean, that's something I've said too, is how he said that Trump is America's Hitler, how he was like said he was a never Trump Republican and all that, is if he actually did get the reins of the presidency, if he would moderate, or if he would, maybe be kind of based, maybe even do some liberal actions that we would see and be like, oh, okay. So where he's actually being a president, sort of less divisive of a president than Trump is. I'm not convinced that he would do that, though. I'm not convinced that he would do that because I think he knows that the base wouldn't like it. But it's an interesting idea. I mean, I would be happily surprised if he actually did moderate and did some good things. But I definitely am not expecting it. And I just do not want another Republican to win this next election. I think it should be all hands on deck to flip the House in 2026, gain in the Senate, do whatever we can there, although it's a hard map, and win the presidency. We just need someone there after Trump to rebuild everything that happened. And maybe it's not Newsom. Maybe there's a better candidate. I hope there's a better candidate out there that just arises to the top that maybe we don't even know about right now. But I don't know. I just think that it's so important. And if J.D. Vance wins, like, the Democrats are going to be so demoralized, it's not even going to be funny. Like, 2 elections in a row, where the other one was Trump for the second time. At least we'd probably win the midterms again by a bunch. But yeah, it's just so important that we win, which is why we need to organize, knock doors, do all the sorts of things that we're going to be doing for the 2026 election, and then down the road for the 2028 presidential election as well.
Yeah. Come to this podcast. Come help us table, talk, debate with your family and friends. I love to do that. I know not everyone does, but, just try and then stay educated, ask questions. One thing I like to do is if the Democrats are celebrating a specific candidate, for example, Zohran Mamdani, when, he first started picking up pace, I went on ChatGPT because I use that for everything, and I said, tell me all the negative things about Zohran Mamdani, and just what is the right saying about him? Why do they hate him so much? So you can educate yourself on the opposition. I think that's extremely important. And then like we're gonna do, debate with some conservatives and see what people have to say about that.
Yeah. Was there anything else?
I'm good.
Okay, well, thanks for tuning in to the WSU Democrats podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to watch another one of our podcasts, make sure to click right here. Hope you guys have a nice day or night, everybody. See you later.